Yes.
You hyphenated your last name.
Yes.
Did Ross have a problem with that? Or was it even a conversation?
You asking, I done did 755,000 interviews. And you done asked me 2 or 3 questions I ain't never had. Like, that's another good one. You trying to get me in trouble here. But, yes, Ross did have a problem with that.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, he did. He was not happy. He was like, no, like, you get married, you lose your last name. And all of my family has. Like, my mom is Richards. Like, nobody else has. And, I was still competing at the time when I got married. And I'm like, babe, like, everybody knows me as Sanya Richards. Like, it would be crazy in my mind to just lose my last name. Like, I've built a huge reputation in the sport with my last name. And yeah, it was one of those things that a lot of communication, a lot of great sex.
That's the key, huh?
That's the key. And he came around, I think ultimately I kept saying to him, I'm like, it doesn't matter about our last name. It's all about our love. Like, I could point to a lot of people who changed their last name and they're still not married. They're not as committed as I am to you. And I think, ultimately he agreed, he was like, I believe that you have established a lot with your name. And if you want to keep it, then, he wasn't thrilled, but he was okay with it. We made it work.
So you mentioned not cooking. My husband is tuned in, baby. You heard that, right? How do you get away with this? What are you doing? What are you doing?
You move your mama in and she cook. No.
That's the key.
That's the key.
No, I would rather cook. We will figure that.
Move your mama in. That's funny. Okay.
Girl,
okay. No, that's not the key.
We ain't like y'all. Y'all, no. My mama can't come. She can't come. She don't watch the show, so she'll never know I said that.
Yeah. She need to tune in. My mama's watching. But so I always say I was like, when my mom was in the kitchen cooking, I was running. So I didn't really get,
Okay.
I didn't get as much as I should have in the kitchen. And I'm really hit or miss when it comes, like, sometimes it'd be like popping. Other days it's like he just eating to survive. So my mom is a great cook and she's happy to come in and cook for us. But my sister says this all the time. I have a great husband. I really do. Like, he doesn't have like all of these expectations, like he's not overly traditional. Obviously he would like for me to be the lead parent and, do certain things, but like, not lead parent, but, like be the kind of mom, all that stuff. But he lets me be me. He knows cooking is not my ministry. And so I make sure we have food.
Right. We gonna eat.
We gonna eat, whether it's I buy food or I cook once or twice a week or we order out or my mom cooks. We gonna eat. But yeah, it's just not, God didn't wire me like that.
Like that, yeah. And you got wired very well. So
Thank
your
you.
wires are working.
Thank you.
When it comes though to like the transitions that you've been through in your relationship, because to be together with someone for that long, think about like you yourself has changed and evolved so much.
Oh yes.
How have you been able, and you mentioned you built that solid foundation.
Yeah.
What did it take to build that? Because how have you been able to evolve and not outgrow one another?
Such good stuff. I think the main thing in relationships, people say that you have to be evenly yoked. But people think that means like y'all got to be bringing the same amount of money and that's not the case. It's about at every point in your journey, checking in and being sure that you guys are still on the same path towards where you want to go. And so for me and my husband, that's looked like different things at different times. And I think especially in our society and in the way that Black men view themselves or are told to be, sometimes that can be challenging when seasons change, right? But I think what makes my husband so amazing is that we are a team. We are a team. And sometimes he LeBron, sometimes I'm Steph Curry. And he gonna pass me the ball when he needs to, and I'm gonna pass him the ball when he needs to. And so I think that's the most important thing. My husband is always like, we're a team, So if you're up front right now, like I'm willing to, take care of Deuce and do whatever, and vice versa. When my husband is doing his thing, I don't mind playing in the back. And so I think that for us, it's always been about like, like I support him in everything that he's doing. I love on him. I pull him along, and he does the same thing. He loves on me, supports me, pulls me along, and we just communicate. We communicate, baby. How are you feeling? What do you need? How can I be there for you? How can I support you? I'll drop what I'm doing if I feel like, he needs me, right? Like nothing is more important than our relationship. So even if I'm killing it, it's like it doesn't matter if my husband is depressed or if he feels like he's not being loved on. Like those things don't matter because I want all this with him. So, I think it's very important that you really check in with your partner, like understand where they are as a human being right now. What do they need? And then try to provide those things for them. And obviously you can't do everything. You got to have God in the middle of your marriage. Like if he's not there, if that person is not connected to God, that's also, you know, a recipe for disaster. But yeah, I think we just, you know, we're always checking in at every stage. I feel like we've been, you know, as close to equally yoked as we could be.
Okay. So your husband is also an athlete.
Yes.
When he retired, was that a tough transition? I mean, because we've all heard like that is a struggle, you know, coming out. Right. So I'm sure it was a struggle for him just to deal with personally. But did it put a strain on your relationship at all?
Yeah, it absolutely did. Absolutely did. My husband retired the year before I retired. He retired in 2015. I think for me, when I retired in 2016, obviously I had just seen him go through it. But prior to that, I kind of, you know, my dad had always told me when I was a kid, never to be one-dimensional. He was like, I don't care how fast you are, like, you got to get a 4.0 GPA. Like, I maintained a 4.0 GPA in high school, 3.5 in college. I ain't finished, but anyway.
You maintain that.
I maintain, exactly. And I always kind of saw myself as more than an athlete. And, you know, my husband didn't have the same foundation, right? Like his dad wasn't in his life. He had a stepfather. And so I feel like for him, he was so focused on football for so long that when he lost that, he lost a piece of himself. And no matter what you try to do for somebody, that's their journey to be on. And so, and I think I was also very fortunate because when I retired from sports, I immediately started working with NBC. So I was still a part of my sport in this new, unique way when Ross ended his career. And also, too, track and field is kind of on you, right? Like I retired because I wanted to. My husband still had more years in him, but he had a tough injury. He had a hamstring injury first, and he tore his Achilles. And even though he felt like he had more to give, it's not on him.
Right.
The team got to want you. And so there's also that, right? There's also dealing with that. I don't want to say
rejection, but the feeling of rejection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was a different experience for him. And it's looking back now, he was like, he didn't notice it. I knew he was in depression. It's hard to tell the person you love the most, like that you see that on them. But it wasn't until about 2 or 3 years later when he kind of started to come out of it that he was like, damn, like I was really in a low place, you know? And my husband has the best laugh and he's like always this joyous person. And that was kind of, you know, that wasn't his day to day. And so, yeah, it was very tough. It was very tough. But I think because I was going through it, too, now on the same level, I was able to support him and love on him. And, you know, he started a chauffeur service in Austin. And I think that helped him a lot because he started building this team again. And it was very successful. It's, thank God, rebounded again now since COVID. But, you know, he was able to pour himself into that. But it definitely wasn't the same as playing the NFL, being on the field, being in New York. Like, that's, you know, that's a whole different life.
I just thought of something. So you mentioned COVID. Yeah. Everybody was affected by COVID.
Yeah.
I never thought about the way the athletes were affected by COVID. Because if no sports are going on, obviously, well, I don't know if y'all are still getting paid, but how did COVID affect your household, I'll say? Because the chauffeur business, ain't nobody going nowhere. Outside is closed. Nobody needs a chauffeur. So how were y'all able to survive that? And did that cause any turmoil?
I wouldn't say COVID necessarily caused us turmoil, but we definitely have to adjust a lot. My husband, obviously, when you play in the NFL, he's, you know, played for 9 seasons. You know, he's fine, right? And then there's also still monies that come in from that. The chauffeur service was hit dramatically. And, you know, for us, we weren't sure, like, do we hang on to this business? Because obviously we were in the black, he was making great money. Then you're like, okay, you keep sizing down. Obviously, none of us knew when this thing was going to end, what to do. And so, you know, at one point we started to be in the red. Like, we're paying people to stay on board and there's no money coming in. And so, I remember talking to him about it and I was like, baby, I think if we can hold on just long enough, I think that there are going to be a bunch of businesses that do go out of business and you'll be one of
be alive.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank God we held on and it has completely rebounded again and he's doing very, very well. For me, I was very fortunate. So I wasn't competing anymore when COVID happened. I was working with NBC and doing a lot. You know, I work with Nike. My Nike, you know, Nike's an incredible partner. They weren't going anywhere. They stayed on board. And a lot of the things that I was doing just kind of went virtual. I do speaking engagements, so I'm doing stuff for brands. So it didn't hit me as much. I definitely didn't make as much money as I was making in previous years, but I was still able to really kind of flex with the times and stay. So it definitely didn't impact our marriage. Like, we were cool. It was obviously we had to figure out what we're going to do with Deuce and all that kind of stuff like everybody else in the world. But no, I wouldn't say it had a huge impact on us, on our relationship.